Oh, so we all know. Okay.
All right. So welcome. My name's Chantal Thompson. I work for the Ontario Cycling Association. I'll be your host and moderator today for the Women's Cycling Club chat. This is part of the Ontario Women's Cycling Week. The point of today's chat is actually to talk about creating maybe your own women's cycling club or integrating more women into your cycling club. So tonight we will be chatting with Ottawa Women's Cycling Club founders Jen Stephenson and Vicky Thomas, and the mountain bike WildBettys founder, Melinda Davie. So feel free to hold your questions. You can type them in the chat box. I'll integrate them in the conversation. And as you all heard, we are being recorded, and this will be posted to our YouTube page later on this week as part of Women's Cycling Week. There are a couple other exciting webinars coming up hosted by Molly around mental health. We're doing athlete profiles. And if you haven't yet, if you're a member of the OCA, you can actually submit yourself to be one of our featured profiles for the week, which means you kind of get like a highlight spot. We do a couple a day going out there. So lots of exciting things, despite the fact that unfortunately we can't yet be riding together. So we're making the most of it. So I'd like to say welcome to Vicky, Melinda, Jennifer, and thanks to everybody for joining us. I would love to kick things off with getting the three of you to introduce yourself. We can start with Melinda.
Well, hello everybody. This is exciting Women's Week, women's everything, right? It is a new thing that we are in this world, paying attention to everybody's specialnesses. And so I am a retired pediatrician, and I took up biking in the early 2000s, and so started the WildBettys then in 2010. So we had our 10th anniversary and everything was going along swimmingly. We had a big extravaganza in the woods and everything, and then the COVID has, scuppered us for the last 2 seasons. But so that's me.
Excellent. Vicky?
Oh, I was muted. Sorry. Hi, I'm Vicky. I'm one of the founders of the Ottawa Women's Cycling Club, along with Jen Stephenson. I've been riding on and off since the mid-90s, and I've been involved in, a few different clubs in the city, done some racing, road racing, cyclocross racing, and now primarily I ride for fun. I lead cross clinics. I'm a big fan of cyclocross. For anybody who knows me, I'm maybe a pusher of cyclocross. I think it's one of the best ways for women to kind of get an entry into some racing and some more kind of competitive or event-based riding. Yeah, that's me. I'm just passionate about all things bikes, basically.
And a great atmosphere to be introduced to cycling is cyclocross. Perfect. All right, Jennifer, go ahead.
Hi, yeah, I've been in cycling for a long time, since over 30 years, since 1991. In high school, started cycling, and been racing for years, and now I'm on the other side of it, and just really trying to help other women who want to get into cycling, and just being an advocate, basically.
Excellent. Thanks, Jennifer. Perfect. So what I would really love to hear from the three of you, and we can go in the same order as well, just so that everybody in this webinar can get a feel for, your involvement, is I'd love to hear your story about how you were first introduced to cycling. And I mean, I'll go first here. First off, Chantal Thompson is my name. I work for the Ontario Cycling Association. I do kind of all things, whether it's commissarying. I used to race. I help organize races. At the OCA, I'm in their events department. I was in their high performance department, a little bit of everything there. And I was first introduced to cycling because of my brother. He was 6 years older. He started racing and I wanted to do it too. So I joined at the time an all male club, all master males, except for my brother who was in his late teens and me in my early teens. And that was my introduction to cycling, and it was a road cycling team. So Melinda, go ahead.
Yeah, so introduction to cycling. So I got my first tricycle when I was 3. And then, you know, the banana bike when I was 10, and then the 10 speed when I was, I don't know, early teens, which I took that 10 speed. I went to Switzerland to school, and I took that 10 speed all the way over there, packaged it up in a cardboard box. And then, you know, went to school. And so I certainly was never an athlete until my children came along, and then they became pretty strongly motivated athletes not in cycling, but it was the being involved in the mountain biking came when my daughter she was a preteen, I guess, and went to camp and took a mountain bike session at Muskoka Woods. And so she came home and it's like, this is the best thing we can do, that because we were a ski family. And so this is the best thing we can do, this in the summertime, like we do the skiing in the wintertime, all four of us. Little Benny, her brother, could do it. And my husband, who's so busy and didn't always participate in family activities. We can all do this. And so that's when I started, and it just, addictive. Talk about the endurance part of my body that I'd never appreciated before. And then, what can I do? What more can I do? And so it was in 2007, I signed up for the whole O Cup series. Like, I'm just going to do all these races. And then I raced all over. I started doing the stage races. So I did BC Bike Race and Pisgah and the Joburg to Sea in South Africa, long events, and just really embraced it until, of course, you know, time passed, and I can't do all those things anymore, but certainly still really love to mountain bike.
Excellent, thanks. It's interesting hearing the point of somebody who, you know, kind of only entered into the sport as, you know, at closer to a master age, rather than as an elite athlete. So it's interesting hearing different takes there. Thank you, Melinda.
Oh, mid-40s,
master, definitely. Yeah, so that's a master. Yeah. Vicky.
Well, I started riding. I grew up in northern Saskatchewan, so and I was kind of not a kid who fit into high school sports. So I bought myself a bike, and like a mountain bike, and I used to ride every day on the Trans-Canada Highway 10 kilometers to the nearest town, and then turn around and ride back. So that's kind of how I got hooked on cycling. My mom made me these little red spandex cycling shorts that I wore, and no helmet, and I'd bike up and down that highway on a Friday night when everybody else was out doing something else. Well, that's what I was doing. And then you know, I moved to Ottawa for university, and I brought my mountain bike with me and rode everywhere. And then in about 1994, I started working at a news agency, and I happened to have my desk right across from one of the leaders of the Ottawa cyclocross scene, Ian Austin. And I'd see him come in every day in his spandex with his bike. And I think after me asking him about 35 questions every single day, he finally took me to a local bike shop and helped me spend my hard-earned money. And I bought a bike, and a road bike, and then I was hooked. I started doing the women's time trial series here in Ottawa, which I think has been a gateway for a lot of women in this city to get into cycling. And then I met my now husband, and he at a criterium, and I started doing criterium races, and I did a lot of racing, and then kind of fell out of the sport for a while, did some other things, hockey, taekwondo. Then I got back into racing really more seriously in my late 30s. And that's when I really got serious, actually. And that's when I actually became an elite athlete, was in my late 30s, and, you know, went to Belgium and raced cyclocross for quite a few years, was fortunate enough to go to the world championships. And now I just keep riding because I love it. I'm still, you know, I try and ride every day. I think about cross probably pretty much every day in ways that I can help women get into cyclocross. And it's kind of become my passion now, right? I do a lot of other sports at the same time now, but cycling is always it's my go-to. It's that thing that I can do, that I know I can do. And if I'm, you know, especially now during the pandemic, it's been that solve, right? That thing that just can get me out the door, and I just enjoy it. So I see cycling as it's just part of me now.
That's great. Perfect. And Jennifer. How are you
Hi.
introduced to
Yeah.
cycling?
Well, I was when I was like I said was I was in high school, sort of like Vicky. I was getting into a lot of trouble, and my uncle bought me a bike to have me do something more productive with my energy. And I was started with mountain biking, and I fell in love with it even as a teenager, and was immediately hooked on it, and was the first thing ever in sport that I was like actually felt like I could be good at. And so I was just totally in love, and I through all high school and then university and moving around, and I always had the bike with me. And once I started racing too, I was even more hooked, like, just kept kind of going and building, and I just loved it for years and years. And when I finally, kind of settled down and got a real job and had a family, I've, not given it up, but given up racing for a little while, and then being able to come back have on the other side and like still do stuff and still feel like confident and have competency is huge. Like it just means so much, like Vicky said, it's definitely my go-to. Like the idea of ever stopping has never even occurred to me. And most days it's like, one of the best parts of my day for sure.
I love hearing that cycling's kind of been a part of each of your lives throughout your life. Maybe sometimes it takes a back burner, and then all of a sudden, now it's back in the forefront. You're doing it a lot, or you always kind of have it to resort to. And especially during the pandemic, I've been riding my bike more than ever because I actually have a bit of free time. So guess what? I've been on my bike. Yeah, it's great to hear that. Perfect. So I'd love to hear about your experience as a female entering the sport of cycling. And this can be good or bad. For instance, like I said, when I started cycling as a very early teen, I first joined a club that was all men. And to be honest, I didn't think there was anything weird about it. Can't say I noticed a difference. The only time I did notice a difference is if I ever had any saddle trouble. And by the way, Molly Herford does a fantastic talk on saddle comfort and kind of talking about chamois and saddle choices and issues that people can have when riding their bikes. That is also a private video on our OCA YouTube channel. And if you're interested in hearing about it, shoot us an email. You can shoot an email to events.team@ontariocycling.org. I'll type it into the chat box there, and I can give you access to that video. And it talks about saddle comfort. But yeah, when I started cycling, really, other than like the sensitive topics, I felt right at home. How about you, Jennifer?
Yeah, I don't know, like if I gave it much thought, because I was so young, and like you're so full of yourself. Like, to be honest, like I was so full of myself. I've spent so much of my life like recovering from how good I thought I was at some other point. Like, so I never like it didn't really occur to me, except that like now when I watch other women going through probably what I was going through, then it kind of like stings a little bit, because I'm like, and also because it was one of the only things I was actually good at. So like the idea of giving it up never occurred to me. So like I got kicked around quite a lot probably, but it never occurred to me to give it up. So now when I see women, especially in the pandemic, there's more women cycling than ever, but these are women who would probably normally not be doing cycling. And so I feel like their relationship with it is a little less, like not as intense, and like a little thing could set them off and they would not be interested in doing it anymore. And so I feel like kind of protective to that, like seeing women going through things probably that all women go, like being in a male dominated sport. I think a lot of our experiences are probably the same, having to constantly sort of prove yourself, probably, having to take like, quote unquote mansplaining all the time. But when you're not as committed to it as I was, just because I was so young when I got started, and it was so important and continues to be so important to who I am, I worry that there'll be one thing that will just, and they won't be cycling anymore, kind of.
Yeah, absolutely true. You're resilient in your love of cycling, but there are some, let's call it triggers, that you see happening and you're like, oh my God, that could actually drive somebody away. That could scare them away. And I'm the same way, that I try to fix those problems when I see it happening. Or like I talk openly about saddle comfort because I've I know that, experiencing pain, for instance, could stop you from riding your bike. Yeah, that's great. Addressing those problems where you see it. Good. Vicky, how about you? What was your experience as a female entering the sport of cycling?
Well, mine, I kind of started, more quote unquote seriously when I was in my early 20s. And, in Ottawa, we had the women's time trial series, and then I started doing the criteriums, and there weren't a lot of women doing it. But to me, that just didn't really seem to, I was accepted. I was just felt like I was able to just kind of slide in there. Right. And throughout my whole like racing and riding experiences, I've never actually been on a women's club or women's team before. The Ottawa Women's Cycling Club is my first all women club experience. And I never really had any issues. I think maybe because I had like Ian, who was like, I just asked him all my questions. He was the one who told me to stop wearing underwear in my shorts. He was the one who told me that during time trials not to tuck Kleenex into the end of my shorts and to blow my nose during the time trial, and taught me how to do that while riding, and then I had, advice from Mark. But now I see we have the Ottawa Women's Cycling Network with over 1,000 women in it. And I see them asking these questions, which I realize in hindsight, I had like, why aren't my jerseys? Why couldn't I ever get jerseys that fit properly? I had to cut the elastic at the bottom so they could go around my hips, or like little things like the saddle and the chamois cream, and not to use like these things, which I just kind of like figured out or rolled with, just said, okay, well, I guess that's part of cycling, wearing men's shoes, and now I see that, oh, they're actually worth things, right? But I think it just was the era that I started in, and I just got used to it, and yeah, so that's kind of been my experience. I would say it's always been positive. Like I've never had the kind of the negative feedback really ever. So yeah.
And discovering it as you go. And luckily you had a couple good mentors there that you could put up with. I never advise people to be coached by their spouses. Like,
no,
I joke that I'm not a divorce lawyer. Like,
that is something. Yeah. No, don't ever be coached by your spouse for sure. But it's good to have that separate other person there who can help you out.
Amazing. Very nice. And Melinda, how about you?
Well, it's interesting. I think that the quote, not being accepted or feeling out of place, a lot of times has more to do with the personality of the person feeling that than an actual real thing that's going on in the group, because everybody's so busy thinking about themselves, they're really not interested in. But then when you get into a competitive setting, then certainly men will very quickly, and rightfully so, they're bigger and stronger and usually younger now than me. So it's not a competition. So, if they don't want to, give the respect or whatever that one might feel you deserve, you can be on the receiving end of feeling like you might be out of it. But no, I think that one of the reasons why we're here where we are at this juncture is because we're strong personalities, and nobody's going to tell me that I can't do something just because I'm a girl, like that's not where we are. However, all that being said, there are a lot of women who do really feel uncomfortable in a setting with all the sexes involved and all the personalities involved, and would be more comfortable where it's a dynamic that is a little bit more nurturing and calm. And we certainly found that with the Bettys, that all the members that came, they all had a story. It was my boyfriend or an ex-boyfriend or my husband, myself. One of the reasons why I joined the Fly Girls was because I could ride with my kids, but couldn't ride with my husband. He was more powerful than me. And so the dynamic of, I'm no longer married, so the dynamic of the relationship just overpowered the fun of the hobby activity. And then people who are meaning well and so on. So we have a lot of men that contact us saying, I'd really like to get my girlfriend, wife, whatever, in, and I've taken her out and she looks like she's interested, but she can't ride with me. It's not working. So can you, and then, so my thought is that we will help them to learn some skills, because certainly mountain biking is very scary and is high risk. There's no doubt about that. And so if we can do something in a gentler setting, then send her off again. And I get these videos back and these emails of, well, I was able to ride the whatever with John and it was terrific. We had a great day. And, you know, so in that respect, I think the women's group is important, but I don't know, I've never felt anywhere in life as being a woman as a disadvantage. And yet I totally am aware of the world right now and how that's a not a very common thing to say out loud right now, right? Our experiences are very varied. So,
and I want to add, sorry, I should add that it's not that I've never had a negative experience. Like I certainly have, and I just don't want to like go into that in like super detail. I have had negative experience. I have been pushed around by men, really, in the peloton, right? So, but you know, it is still rare. It's not like it's an everyday thing, but it's happened. So I don't want people to think that, you know, if you're feeling intimidated too, that there's no reason to be intimidated, because sometimes that is certainly real. But yeah.
It's interesting. So Melinda was saying how like a lot of people, I mean, cycling, you have to admit, is a male dominated sport. Therefore the chances of, you know, any female on this call right now getting into cycling, I'm willing to bet 80% of you, it's probably because of a male in your life, be it like my sibling, my brother, a parent, a father, a spouse, being, you know, a husband. I bet you a lot of us have been introduced to the sport by a male. And, you know, males, they're stronger, they're faster. They've also probably been cycling longer since they're introducing you to the sport. So it's pretty discouraging to be constantly trying to keep up, you know, to their speed. It's also very difficult to learn when you're like at your maximum heart rate on a group ride where they're going easy and you're killing yourself. You can't learn skills. So I do love that people reach out to women specific clubs like Melinda's and now Vicky's and Jennifer's. You know, they understand the importance of a different setting to learn the skills, to, you know, build those additional friendships. And then, you know, it applies to every other club you belong to. You don't have to just join and belong to one club. I belong to 3 clubs, you know, so I love that you're offering these opportunities. It's fantastic. So with that, we've talked about experiences, and of course we've had our negative experiences. We don't want to focus on that. But I would love to hear from each of you kind of like why you know, what has kept you in cycling for so long? It's always been a part of your life, but, you know, why are you still sticking around? What you doing now? And we'll start actually with Jennifer.
Oh, yeah. I actually laughed when I read that question. Why are you still sticking around? It made me laugh. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have it any other way. I seriously like sometimes when people like ask me why, I'm like, oh, I'm like enjoying it more than I ever have. You know, I think like as I get older, I do actually appreciate that this is something that I can do. Like you don't take it for granted, like when you were younger, you know? And so for sure, like I just think it's a huge gift to be able to do this activity and enjoy it. And there's like all kinds of adjectives that come to mind, you know, freedom and beauty, but really it's just a blessing.
Awesome. Very good. Vicky, why are you sticking around?
I guess I'm I honestly I'm kind of along the same lines as Jen, you know, like I had periods where, you know, I wasn't able to ride. I was ill. I couldn't do it, right? And the one thing that kind of kept me going was knowing that the bike was there ready for me, right? That was always my goal. I could just get back on that bike. And now, you know, now I'm fortunate enough to be in some stable health, and it's now there'll be days when I, you know, maybe I don't feel like riding. Oh, it's too windy. Right? It's amazing how the wind can like convince me not to ride. It's too windy or it's this. And then I remember, well, there was that time when I couldn't ride and how much I wanted to ride. And I just know, I just feel like it's in me. I find that it's maybe sounds a little bit airy fairy, but the bike is just almost an extension of me. Like I get on the bike and it's just good. I feel good out there, right? And I can kind of almost pedal away anything or pedal into anything that I need. So yeah, that's why I'm still around. Yeah.
Good. I'm glad you're still around. Melinda, how about you?
Yeah, talk about, yeah. So I've had a lot of significant injuries that have kept me out a season here and a season there. And so certainly the push to come back, like I was so fit and then I broke my whatever. So then, you have to come back and can I get fit enough? And now I'm at a stage where I have appreciated, and then I've had some other health issues just because I'm getting older. And so I'm appreciating that there isn't really that getting back to anymore. I wasn't able to, now can I? Now how much better can I get from where I am today? And I haven't canceled it, and I still upload to it, but I've stopped looking at the training peaks, trends, and what my powers were and all those kinds of things. I've stopped obsessing over that stuff. Though, like Jen and Vicky have been saying, although all that data and all that creating the data, what was really, really enjoyable. It was really focusing and just on many levels made me feel like a better person and an accomplished body, that I hadn't had before, because before I was always focused on just, the brain and doing the work that I had to do and not being athletic. But so all that keeps me, but what's happened now is what keeps me in it is the women, the friendships and the new ones, these people who are emailing, who want a lesson or who want to know when our rides are starting. I mean, I'm staying in it for them, because if they're new and they get a good experience, then they'll have 30 years or 20 or 10 or however many it is. They're usually younger than me when they start, but not necessarily. There's a lot of women who start in their mid 50s. So that's what's keeping me in it, is the human element of these other people. But without question, the individual body cycling adrenaline thing that happens, and the true addiction that is euphoric is a big driver. It's a big driver. I want to share, right? Want other people to be able to feel that too, for health.
And I mean, hopefully if something good does come of this pandemic, I think, well, we've heard about all the bike shops selling out of bikes, so many people purchasing new bikes, that hopefully clubs like both of yours and clubs of other people on this call today can kind of, I don't want to say capitalize monetarily, but you know what, like, let's keep these women on bikes. Let's keep everybody on the bikes. Let's make it accessible and welcoming and safe, and do whatever we can. And that's why I'm still in cycling. I was never an amazing cyclist. I enjoyed cycling. I say now I ride my bike for my mental health, and I always feel good after I ride my bike. And I love sharing that with others and the friendships you make along the way. But I've also just followed the sport of cycling. I knew my life would be cycling. I'm working for the Ontario Cycling Association now. And I know that I always want to give back to the sport, be it through coaching, through working at the OCA, through helping event organizers run events, through commissarying, where there's a need. It's always nice to be able to just give back and get other people to enjoy the sport and have a good experience overall. Yeah, excellent. So now let's get into the nitty gritty. I would love to start with Melinda, just because her club has been around a bit longer, and I'd love to hear her experiences, and then we'll move to Jennifer and Vicky. And I'd love to hear about why you decided to start your own women's specific cycling club. So,
well, okay. Okay. So there was another club a few years ago, and it was around for 10 years. So 22 years ago, it was around, called Fly Girls, and it was out of Collingwood. And I became the Toronto leader with another gal shortly before the founder of that club had enough. That's it. The burnout is a significant issue, and as we say, the four of us may still be interested, but not everybody is forever, and that there's all sorts of hobbies and things to do in life, right? So at any rate, so she wanted to fold the club, and so it's kind of like, okay, well then now what are we going to do? because the club, I had gone on to racing at that point, and so was no longer leading rides in Toronto, but leaders, you need a lot of devoted leaders. And so there was a little handful of Toronto gals who really enjoyed sharing the lead role. There'd only be one group go out once a week, but they shared it so that not every week they had to lead, right? Cooperative management of the team. So they were keen to still, and nobody was racing or anything like that. This little group was only riding. And but I was racing, and I had been racing for Fly Girls. And it's like, wait a second, this women's club's not going to be here. Who am I going to race for, right? Like, wait a second. So I knew that if we got a club together and we affiliated with OCA and they took over the rides, then we could get it going. So that's what we did. So we met in a pub, quite frequently, because it was a lot of fun. But we were brainstorming about what we should do and what the name should be and all that. And so the winter of 2009, we incorporated and got all our ducks in a row so that we started up in the spring that year, complete with kit, which back then, custom kit, it was all men's sizes. There were no women's sizes. You could put a women's, was that year, maybe it was even a couple of years later. Yes, that's right. You couldn't even get a women's chamois in that custom gear. You had to have a men's chamois. But they had developed we used Louis Garneau, and they developed an excellent women's chamois to put in all the designs. But even over the years, the women's, if you wanted, like when we wanted downhill jerseys and things like that, they were still being men's styling. And you're right, Vicky, it was the hips that you'd get it small in the shoulders, and then you'd be tugging around on the hips. There's a difference in our shapes for sure. So at any rate, so we kind of just modeled ourselves after the club that had already been, to know what it was that we needed. And lo and behold, we got a big race team, and we ended up getting more girls to lead. And each year we've grown and grown and grown. And the second season, we opened a chapter. Again, it was a few Fly Girls who were out in the West GTA, who wanted to start up a WildBettys chapter. So we've got a chapter in, we call it the Guelph, Cambridge, Campbellville now. We started calling it Milton, but there's just so many great places to ride out there, and they rotate around and ride at all the places versus the Toronto gals ride in the Dawn. So yeah, so that's how that happened.
All right, perfect, neat. And now, so for a newer club, Jennifer and Vicky, I'm not sure who wants to go first. You can bounce it off of each other, or both unmute yourselves if you want. So more recent of an answer, I suppose, is why did you decide to start your own women's specific cycling club in a pandemic?
I'll let Vicky. I'll let Vicky take the lead on this one.
Yeah, it's kind of starting a club in the pandemic. Probably maybe not one of the best things to do, but in the long run, I think it's actually helped us. This actually really all started about a month before the pandemic. I had a chat with Vince Caceres from the Cyclery, and he kind of asked me, could I do something? He had a lot of women who wanted to join his team, but it wasn't really quite the right fit. Could I try and roll with something? Could I think of some ideas? So I happened to send an email. I sent an email on International Women's Day to about 50 women, basically all the female cyclists that I knew, and said, hey, there's this idea. What do you think? Can we get something going? Are people interested in some type of club, network, bringing women together? And Jen was on the email, and that literally brought us together, because Jen had already created a kind of a Facebook presence, and we kind of repurposed that, and we started with this idea of a network to connect women and to get people together to ride. Then the pandemic came. So then, we were kind of in this standstill, and we kind of still ran with our club idea. We had to unfortunately shut down the club because of the pandemic. We ended up developing the network kind of just grew and grew and grew, and we had women joining to talk about bikes and where are you riding? How can we do this? How can we do that? And then this year we relaunched the club, and be honest, we were really hoping for 10 members. That was like, if we could get 10 members, we can cover our OCA fees, right? This was kind of our thing. Well, now we have 86 members, and I actually think 2 more people joined today. You know, we have like 88 women across, I mean, Jen knows this, the demographics better than I do, but I mean,
Jen's the numbers.
Jen's the numbers,
charts.
yeah.
Yeah, we have over 1,000 people on the network. So I think it was the pandemic, and well, Vicky sent out the email. We got rolling with a Facebook group, and then it was like the group like just exploded, and we couldn't believe it. And we had thought originally this was all going to be people we knew, and it was just going to be very easy. And it quickly got like not out of control, but to the point where we're like, we can't, even though it was the pandemic, we were like realizing we can't post rides on this group because 100 people might show up, and then what are we going to do? And so then that was like, that made us rethink our thing, and in terms of the popularity and how we were going to manage it. And then this year we thought we were asking a lot when we asked people, and again in the pandemic, to take out a license. As you know, just the idea of taking out a license, not knowing if there's even going to be events to do. And so we thought, like Vicky said, 10 people. And then, you know, within the first week we had over 40 people. And we were looking at each other like, how are we going to deal with this? And that's sort of been, this whole process has just been completely eye-opening and overwhelming. And, you know, we have a lot to learn about running a club. I think we both are willing to totally admit that. But I mean, there's no doubt, like, I mean, any question we had about whether there was a need, because there was questions last summer, is there a need for this? What are we doing here? Like, are we doing something that isn't unnecessary? Why can't people, you know, just join the Ottawa Bicycle Club? You know, why won't women just join the Ottawa Bicycle Club? And in the end, although the 2 of us are both members of the Ottawa Bicycle Club ourselves, we realized that it wasn't a good fit for a whole bunch of other people. And so we were like, we're doing something that people want.
Yeah,
I think the 3 of you all kind of identified the same thing, as like, there is a need, and maybe it wasn't necessarily for somebody like you. You were probably doing okay in whatever club you were in, but you realized that there was a need for other females. Go ahead, Vicky.
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, there's a number of women who initially, you know, they joined the network. And when we started talking about the club, I reached out to quite a few people and said, you know, maybe you want to join the club. Maybe you want to join the club. Oh no, I'm not interested in the club. I'm more of a loner. I don't want. Now, most of those women have actually joined the club once they saw that. I think sometimes people think cycling club, they think competitive, they think team, they see what their husbands or their boyfriends are involved in, and they don't want that. And we've tried to position the club as it's a way for women to get together, support them, train together, ride together. If and when there are events, go to events, do clinics. We're holding webinars on, you know, topics like talking about how much tire pressure you want to have, answering all these types of questions, like giving people the club is almost like, it's almost sort of become a community for women cyclists in the city. And we're getting them from all, you know, we have some younger women like 22, 23, and then we have women older than us, right? We have women who've never been in a club, women who only do bike packing, people who want to do Everesting. It runs the gamut, right? And that's super exciting, because I honestly didn't know that was out there. I didn't know, you know, I come from very much a racing background, right? So it's nice to see women who are almost like they're more passionate about bikes probably than Jen and I are, because they come from it from a different way, right? A different modality.
Along with that, we have actually a question in the chat box from Louisa from Ontario by Bike. And she was actually wondering what advice the 3 of you may have on getting this a potential new club off the ground, and specifically about resources that would be required. She sees a lot of friends and clubs, and she's afraid it seems like a lot. They maybe need too many resources. What would you say to that? And actually, let me first ask Vicky and Jennifer, because it's they have a take from the let's say pandemic potential, pandemic side of you, and then Melinda, I'll get you to answer that if that's okay.
You want to go ahead, Jen?
In terms of like resources, in terms of like dollars and cents and like money and time commitment, there's certainly a time commitment. The way the OCA is set up and the way that we're set up is we're set up as a private team, and Chantel can probably talk about how appropriate that is or inappropriate, but it is working in terms of like a control aspect. Like we have obviously control over the membership, which is kind of attractive, and there is slightly less of a commitment. The other thing is obviously there was a lot of work this year, but a big part of it is actually just re-registering. So as you go through that process on a yearly basis, you're going to learn the ropes, right? So the next time you do it, it's not going to be starting from ground zero. So I'm not going to say it was a lot of work, and Vicky is a whiz with these kind of documents. She's kind of her bread and butter. So she was great. And we have some other volunteers who are great. And the OCA also will point you to resources. Like you're not going to be dealing like Chris at the OCA and Chantel at the OCA will be very helpful for you. You can ask them questions like directly.
Yeah, I would agree with Jen. I mean, I think we actually drilled Chris on all the different types of clubs and what is the best way for us to do it. And, you know, we did get a lot of help from the OCA with examples of, you know, the rider guidelines and the risk management plan, and Chantel led the ride leader training, which made it easier for us to get volunteers. I think one of the biggest suggestions I would have to anybody who's starting a club is don't be shy to ask for help. Don't be shy to ask of your members, however many members you have, 5, 55, 500, ask for help, because you can't do it alone. At first, it's kind of like it's a slow roll. At first, there's not a lot of work, but then you're like, oh, now there's work. Even in a pandemic, there's a lot to do, right? But I think the first year is probably the biggest. I'm anticipating that next year, I'm hoping we'll be in the new normal. And really, it's just me going out and riding. We won't have a lot of more of the process to deal with, because it's going to be more about riding bikes, right? So I think this year is probably not the best example of a normal scenario for starting a club.
It is great though to hear your take, because I mean you're fresh off the boat from doing this, you know, so like you can speak from experience, like, oh man, there was a little bit more paperwork. We had to, you know, you had to read every single line on each piece of paperwork because you had no idea what you were reading. But you're right, the OCA, we have example documents. We're not expecting you to create a risk management plan out of thin air. We have examples. Just make sure you change all the names to be your actual club name on the paperwork and don't keep the example club names. I love that there's that fresh view of like a newly created club. Now, Melinda, does it get easier?
No. No, because the concerns changed. You know, like for 2 years now. Last year we put we're registered with the OCA and we paid our money and done all the paperwork and revamped the risk management to include COVID things now, and you know, you have to be making sure that your bylaws and your insurance and your leaders education, and you know, there's a lot of moving parts that you need each year to ensure that they're adequate, right? Like something new comes along each year, so you do need to, you can't just change things. Some things do just stay stagnant, and in that respect of filing the documents for the OCA, it becomes easier, except that there's a turnover of your leaders, and so the leaders need to all be on board, and you're needing to explain and ensure that they really do understand what the situation is. That if, you know, Susie Q brings along Barbie to join the ride and she's not a member just to try it out, no, she can't come. Because, you know, injuries happen, and you really don't want to risk somebody's insurance coverage because you were torn between the rules and just trying to be nice, you know, or to fly the other way. I'm sorry, my dogs are gonna to fly the other way, that that you don't have a leader. Leaders, somebody didn't show up, and so then you say, okay, well, let's just let so and so sweep, you know, and then they're not fully trained, and something happens. So in that respect, I've gotten, as the club has gotten bigger and bigger, and we've gotten more and more people and added leaders that I don't necessarily know really well, right? Because they're newer people. They're trained by us, but they're not. I'm finding it a little bit more stressful, and I'm feeling a lot more responsibility. And of course, with the COVID last year, we had our usual members join, and then it was kind of like, okay, well, we're not running anything, so we'll give you your money back, or we'll defer. And so we gave a couple of people money back. Mostly everybody deferred. So now everybody's deferred, and I didn't turn on. It's up and running, but there are no links off of our website or anything that are live to our 2021 membership, because I don't, $60 or not, I don't see a reason to take anybody's money when I don't have a product to give them. And with respect to, now, one of our expenses was that we did get a WildBettys Zoom account. So that's, a couple $100 we spent on that. And I've tried to have, and the ladies have embraced it, some Zoom cocktail parties with various rooms, the kitchen and the foyer and the breakout rooms with different names and stuff. But never mind, it's not riding, it's not meeting for tailgating, it's not the product that we have. So I'm hopeful that with all of our vaccines and so on, we'll get up and running. I know I looked at our website today, and I know that the website says that we're gonna start our rides in July, but I don't think that's gonna happen. I really don't. And the real issue is the leaders, the comfort level of the leaders. You're asking these people to be with people that they don't know, and to be responsible for people that they don't know. And so far we haven't, nobody has felt comfortable to do that. Now, as everybody gets vaccinated, which we are, I'm optimistic that all that's going to change, and we'll be back having lots of parties in the woods, and we'll be doing our night riding in October with the lights, and looking forward to 2022. But 2022 is going to come with a whole lot of extra things that we have learned from this situation, and things that we are going to need to keep administratively. So it's a big job. I also have to say that I've really enjoyed doing it. So there's a real sense of learning and accomplishment and so on. So I don't want to scare anybody off, what you get back from starting a club, but it's not really, it's not an easy thing. It is a difficult thing. And then passing on, what's the word? That's not the right word. Succession.
Yeah, succession plan. Yeah. What happens when you stop? Who's going to do it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. It's a really big deal. And these are volunteers. You've already asked volunteers to do the leading, and volunteers to do the social media posting, and the jobs just keep getting more and more. So yeah, just go into it with your eyes wide open is what I would say.
So aside from ride leaders, Melinda, how many would you say, like, active volunteers would you have within your club? And by active volunteers, I mean they're probably having to do something, let's say weekly, maybe bi-weekly, for the club, be it like the people who actually coordinate the rides. Let's go non-COVID year here, the web person. How many active bodies, not counting ride leaders, would you say you have?
Oh, not counting ride leaders.
Yeah, let's not count ride leaders.
Ride leaders. I mean, the club is riding,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, that is and we run with about 45 leaders.
Oh, wow. That's a lot of ride leaders.
Right. Because we've got a ride to, and in contrast to road clubs, we only ride 2 nights a week in 2 different places, right? But we need, there's skill levels, and so you need to have a
You need
suite for
different levels
everything.
within each ride. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you've signed up, and I know from being the guy who tried to do a season all on my own with somebody else, right? Just the 2 of us as one lead and one sweep. It's 27 weeks in the season that go from May until September ish. And that's a whole lot of commitment for somebody. Whereas if you split it up amongst people, and it's a couple of times a month, but if they happen to be around for all 27 weeks and are enjoying it and they come out, then that's a bonus. But the years that we've been a little lean, or we've had way more people show up because the weather's been terrific week after week after week, the leaders they come and they enjoy it and they have a good time, but they all have at one point or another said, geez, I just kind of wanted to ride tonight. I didn't want to lead, and I would prefer to have never heard that. But it's a manpower issue.
Yeah,
and
you
then
seem to have a fairly healthy number of ride leaders, so hopefully that covers it. But yeah, that's a good argument for new clubs to train lots of ride leaders and not be afraid of being a ride leader. And if you have any questions about ride leading and more information, you can also email either support@ontariocycling.org or the events email address, and I can answer any of those questions on you, send you pamphlets, paperwork on that. I love that. I'd love to ask the same question to Vicky and or Jennifer. If you could give me a number now. Melinda talked about her ride leaders being a big component of her club. You guys probably haven't had really many club rides yet, but how about the people working behind the scenes? We see 2 of you here on this call. What would you say? How many additional people? What's the work like?
Well, there's 2 of us, and then we do have a volunteer treasurer who's helping us with keeping the books. We have one of our younger members, Danielle, who was actually featured on the OCA site today. She's running with our social media for us because, Jen and I are kind of fossils when it comes to the Instagram craze. So Danielle is doing all that for us. And we have, how many ride leaders do we have right now? We have 8 ride leaders maybe, or 10 ride leaders?
Yeah, we have 8 ride leaders.
8 ride leaders, yeah. And
now we just have to be able to have rides.
Yeah. So, we are doing what we're doing because we can't do our organized rides right now is we're using the Cycle Club app, and we are asking our ride leaders on different weeks, depending if it's a road week or a gravel week, to create and share Strava routes. And then we're posting those to the Cycle Club app, and then we're encouraging our club members to go out and do those rides. Some of them we set up as like photo scavenger hunts. So make sure you take a picture of the chickens on this road, or if you see this, statue on this road, take a picture. And then the other thing we've done is we've created cycling pods. So we have kind of organized everybody based on their area and the city. And so then, because you can ride with up to 5 people now, we're encouraging people to self-organize as a way to get out and ride and connect with people off the Facebook page. And some of our ride leaders are helping by contributing rides for the pods. Jen can speak more to it as well. We have all our kit design was also done by a volunteer.
But we are aware, and we consistently are saying we need more volunteers.
Yeah.
Because we have more ideas than we have people to implement them. And we're constantly getting more ideas, which is amazing. Our members will give us an idea and we're like, great idea. And then, who is going to do this wonderful thing? And it's like, I don't know. So yeah, we definitely are aware that we need more volunteers and we need to keep people engaged. And so I think, especially with the pandemic, it is very, it's a challenge to keep people engaged. So in a way, social media is helpful. We have two Facebook pages we're running. And then we have 2 Strava groups we're running. And like, although it is work, it is also a way to keep people engaged. You know, when things get a little bit like blah, it's like, okay, I'll go to the Strava group and see who's got the most miles this week, or what
Yeah.
kind of milestones are getting achieved, kind of thing.
I know a lot of
So-
riders who are in those Strava clubs, and they're like, oh, I'm 5th in my club this week. I got to get another ride in. Melinda has something to say about this.
Yeah, the Strava is super. Talk about competitive. Who needs events when we've got Strava now? But I was going to ask. No, the question from the participants was about resources. So we talked about human resources that we need a lot, but it also costs money to start a group. And when I attended the information session on that cycle app of Jeff Faulds, I was very, very enthusiastic, but haven't done anything about it because it costs money. And so I'm curious if you guys are already with not riding, how did you manage the money? Did you guys pay? Because with 80 members, you're having, it's $500. So
we did take registration fees this year. We basically had to in order to function. So we did charge everyone a registration fee. So we have that pool of money that we're focusing on, and we did pay. So we did pay for the Cycle Club app, yes, and it was $2.25 per person or something, up to 100 people.
Oh yeah, but then well, that was it. So it was I remember discussing it with him, that the way he had worded it, it wasn't quite. You basically were going to spend either a couple $100 or $500, or you were going to get very quickly into the higher number. So the question, so it's not really so much per person. If you can't actually cut it off at just how many. If I've only got 80 people, I'll give you $2 times 80, but that's not what it is. It's the two. So to ask the participant to actually pay on top of your registration.
No. We paid it out of the registration fees.
Yeah, we used our registration. So we charged people $35 to join the club up to May 31st. Yeah. And then after that, April.
That's okay. You had a graded thing.
Yeah. So we just used that money that we had, we covered our OCA fee, and then we used our registration fees to cover the Cycle Club app, and
that's really it.
That's really it.
That's it so far. And did you, and the other outlay that we always did, and I know that a lot of the ladies would say to me, why did you do it this way? It's like, well, because somebody comes to me in the middle of the season and wants a jersey or a short, I got him in the back of my car. But that was an outlay of the Bettys to buy the many thousands of dollars of clothing. So if you had a kit that was designed, you did the kit as a just strictly an order.
So we did it with Jack Crew, and that way, but we did do focused ordering. So and it's not just Jack Crew, a lot of they all do. Yeah. So like there's like a store that's open for X amount of days. And so then you hit certain targets and you get discounts from there. And so that's what we did too. So we did that, and then that gets delivered directly to the people. But then people will ask, well, can you open the store again? And then we say, well, no, we're going to wait. And we're going to wait until there's more people who want to buy kit so that they can get the discount, so that everyone's not shelling out $200 a jersey, buying one of jerseys kind of thing. And, I don't know. It's just our philosophy, I guess.
We've tried that too over the years with all various companies. I keep coming back to Louis Garneau because their product is just amazing. But and they've been working on their own pay as you go type store, and tweaking it and so on. But yeah, it isn't satisfactory, because I missed the emails. I didn't know that you were doing it, despite me sending out repetitive emails. And somebody is busy with their life and didn't see it, and they really would be keen to have a $200 jersey. They'd like one. So how are you going to fix this for them, right? Whereas if I've been able to pull one out, here you go.
It's tough trying to satisfy everybody when you're doing that.
Yeah, it is.
All right. So I'd like to move forward. I know we're at 8 o'clock. I don't want to be maybe just another 10 minutes or so. I would love to ask each of you if you have any advice for anybody else, perhaps on this call, considering opening up their own women's specific club or team? We addressed some questions there for sure, but do you have any specific advice for a women's club or team?
I would say know why you're doing it, right? Know why you want to create a women's specific club or team, and know what your mission statement is and who you want to serve. And then that's going to help you figure out your plan moving forward, right? And determine kind of how your club, the ethos of your club and what your club is going to provide, so that when people contact you and say, well, what kind of club are you? What kind of things do you do? You know, you can tell them, and you're being consistent with that. And that's something that Jen and I have, you know, we get emails all the time from people. What does your club do? What are you doing? How is this the right club for me? And it's easy for us to answer those questions because we know very clearly who we are and who we aren't. And I think that, you know, I think you just need to know why you're doing it. And well, you have, as Melinda said, like, and you have to want to do it, right? You can't just do it as an afterthought or as an aside, because it takes up time and it's planning. And there's an incredible responsibility when people give you money to join something that you've created, and that feeling of I really need to give back, and you're almost trying to over deliver all the time, right? And so you have to be ready for that. You can't do this with half your heart and half your commitment. It has to be an all-in thing. So that's what I would say. That's kind of my advice.
That's great, Vicky. Thanks. I mean, you're right. The two clubs we chose to focus on for the chat today are clubs that are oriented towards beginner, intermediate. Though you may have competitive people definitely within your club, I would say competition is definitely not the main focus of these two clubs. And there's a reason why we went with the two of you, because there are women's specific race teams in Ontario as well. But for this chat here, we're trying to focus on that club level, non-competitive, trying to capture all these people buying bikes during the pandemic, especially. So very good, Vicky. Anybody else?
I think I was unmuted and then I muted. Sorry, am I unmuted now? The women, sorry about that. The women specific part, like we said, I think is it doesn't have to be only women always, but the right, like, you know, we've had as we've gotten our people certified to instruct and so on, we've had male instructors instruct us, you know, I mean, but with respect to the actual group being just women, we added in some weekend destination things. Let's go someplace else, you know, we'd meet up at Buckwalla, which sadly is no longer, and we'd meet at Hardwood, or we'd meet at other places, and it would be people from both chapters would come and everything would be terrific. And then it was kind of like, well, but it's on the weekend. And so like, can my husband come along? And how about my little boy? He comes, is that okay? And so we did actually realize after a few seasons that it ebbs and flows, you know. Some years you get a whole bunch of older single women who are, you know, looking rebirth. And other times you get a lot of younger people who are, you know, the new boyfriend and they want to keep up and so on, right? So it does change. And we did have there for a while a real group of people who were families and didn't want to exclude their family. So it's like, okay, well then for this season, we're going to have every other destination ride is going to be a family picnic after, and the men can ride and the kids can ride, and we'll do that. And so then it's like, well, you also have to be aware of the women who, well, I didn't sign up to be with so-and-so's husband. I want to be, you know, well, we've got this for you, right? So I think to be flexible and to, as Vicky says, the mandate of why you're doing it to provide something extra for women, but it also needs to be fluid, that it can change, and that's not a bad thing, and it also doesn't have to change to stay forever that way. And give something a go, something new, and listen to the membership.
Very good. Thanks, Melinda. Jennifer, do you have anything to add? Any advice for anyone else considering opening up their own women's specific club or team?
I would say if you feel passionate about it, to go for it. I think it's a great time to do it. I think there's a huge demand, and I would really be loving to hear that more people are doing it, because I know that here in Ottawa, cycling is going completely nuts, but I know that it's going the same, like, you know, in Toronto, for example. And I would love to hear that other people are taking some initiative and getting something going, because I think women's cyclists are overlooked, and they're not necessarily served well. And I think a club run by women is a very efficient club. We would laugh at the beginning of the season at how far ahead we were of our male compatriots, and just, you know, smugly, of course, since we've never done this before and not knowing what's going on. But yeah, you know, oh, our kit's ordered and it's, you know, like February 1st kind of situation. Anyways, I think it's a good situation. I think women are great organizers and leaders, and I would just say, you know, it's a lot of work. It's a passion. Yeah, Vicky, you have to be passionate about it for sure. But, you know, you can do it. It's not life or death, and have fun.
Excellent. And so I know there's a lot of people on this call also who are currently members of a club. Maybe they don't quite have the resources, or they're not ready yet to create their own women's only specific club. But do you have any advice for pre-existing clubs and teams to make their club or team more welcoming to women in general? Do you have any advice?
I would say to really put it out there and offer it. You know, that whole thing about the baseball diamond, you know, build it and they'll come. I think it's really true. Put out there that you're going to have, and get the volunteers. And maybe the first couple of weeks people don't come, but, you know, word of mouth will spread, or a social media pic of a couple of gals on a trip, on an outing, will then, you know, spur somebody on who saw that and, oh, geez, I missed it. You know, I mean, just because you don't get a big turnout rate the first time you do something doesn't mean that it's not worthwhile. Because I do think that there are an awful lot of people who join clubs and don't participate. You know, they got all sorts of ideas when they're from the couch in the wintertime, and it's a nominal fee. So when it's supporting to everybody, and so they push the button and then they don't ever come out. And so I would say that if you build it, they'll come. If you're interested, right? I mean, if you want to do it.
Yeah. Vicky or Jennifer?
I mean, I think it's interesting because in Ottawa we have quite a few clubs that have, you know, I used to ride with Rendell, and I ride with Cyclery, and there's Ottawa Bicycle Club, and there's Eurosports, there's 613 Cycling, there's Empire, and they're all kind of, you know, they're men and women, right, in those clubs. And I think that the advice is, there's often I mean, honestly, I guess I don't really, just keep doing what you do. And if it's the right thing, the right women are going to come to you. You know what I mean? Don't try and craft something that's just for women. Do your thing, and the women that fit and that will come to that, right? So, like, you know, there's different women in the cyclery than there is in 613, or there is in the Ottawa Women's Cycling Club, right? It's just the same. That's what I think, right? But
I think that existing clubs are in a great position to be doing this. And I would, you know, a lot of people talk about encouraging women, and it's really encouraging women to be more like men. And I think that the women who are getting into cycling right now aren't interested in that. Excuse me, my children have just come home. I would say that if you have an existing club, that you can be a visionary and encourage women to get into the cycling club. But if you think you're going to encourage women to be more like men, then you're probably barking up the wrong tree.
Yeah. And I mean, as far as my advice, I'm going to draw from my ride leader training program that I give out to clubs. And the main thing there is, cameo appearance. I think if you're posting club rides and you've promised a club ride at 22 kilometers an hour, ride at your posted speed. All right. I find a lot of times a female, I don't know why, it's like ingrained in us, I suppose, but a female shows up to a ride and the men are like, I can go faster than this. Well, that female is not going to enjoy it, because I showed up for a 22-kilometer-an-hour ride, not like hanging on for dear life on your wheel for the entire ride. I'm not going to come back. So yeah, just, I mean, offer those rides for a variety of speeds, and you'll cater to women, you'll cater to men, you'll cater to anybody starting out in the sport. If you just open your club up to perhaps some slower speed rides, and your fast guys, go stick them all together and they can go hammer each other's brains out. But hopefully you can get a ride leader who's willing to ride a little bit slower and have an enjoyable experience. Because it's not always about, you know, how many kilometers you did, your average speed, how fast you went. I really, during the pandemic, started enjoying riding and taking pictures of nice bridges and stopping for butter tarts and, you know, enjoying those chats at the car at the end of the day. Melinda.
Yeah, that you reminded me that I really felt for the women, particularly when we have the years that we've had a devoted race team, you know, and you're riding in the evening, and this is my night to be able to ride. The rest of my week I can't, and now you've got me leading, so I only really want to lead the wild group so that I can go fast and go far and do everything. And but now you're asking me to be to take the Bettys out on the regular, you know, easy loop and so on. So it really, yeah, to really make sure that the volunteers are as devoted as you are, that leading is not your workout ride. It's not your training ride. It's a bonus if you are leading the fast group that night and you get some training in, but that is not why you're there leading, you know, because yeah. So, and it's a hard message for a lot of people. And then for me, I always say, well, then, you know, then don't lead, then just join us and be in the club. Then, you know, lead, it's you're just not a terrible thing to back away from the leading, you know. You want to have the right kind of people doing the leading.
Great. Thank you so much, Melinda. I'd like to first off, thank our lovely panelists, Vicky, Jennifer, Melinda, for taking the time out, putting some thought into why they're doing all these crazy things and giving back in the sport as they always do. I'd love to thank the additional participants who came and joined, and simply by being here at tonight's meeting, you are getting a pair of socks in celebration of Women's Cycling Week. So they're like OCA branded Women's Cycling Week socks. So you'll see that'll come in the mail to each of you as participants here. So thank you so much. If you have any questions, just send us an email at support. Oh goodness, there we go. support@ontariocycling.org. I put it there in the chat there. And I think that's everything. Any closing statements from any of my lovely participants here?
I was just going to say, you know, if people do have questions, they can feel free to, you know, you can give out my email address, answer questions. We don't have a website yet. We're just a private Facebook group. So if people have questions or they want to, you know, pick our brains, that would be great, you know, because we didn't really have anybody to ask our questions to, you know, about this specific scenario. So if there's any way we can help, you know, we're very happy to help, because we just want to see more and more, right, when it comes to women's cycling. So yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. You can get a hold of us through the website or Instagram or whatever. Just Google WildBettys and I'll get it. I get all the notifications for everything, so we can answer your questions if anything comes up and you didn't want to go through the OCA. But of course, go through the OCA. You may find out even more.
All right, great. Thank you everybody for coming and joining us today. And I will sign off. Once again, my name's Chantal Thompson. If you have any questions, you can always call or email the office and I'll be there to help you out. So will Chris Baskis, as well as Kim, who's in on the conference tonight. Thank you, everybody.
Have a good evening.
Great. Thanks for hosting.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.